"You're welcome," as if he had personally paid for her groceries. This mentality reaches far beyond this one encounter Stephanie had and represents the views of much of our society. The story of Stephanie's world has an arc that seems headed for a disastrous breakdown. First, there is the physical wear and tear that goes along with lifting, vacuuming, and scrubbing 6 to 8 hours a day. At the house cleaning company that I worked for, every one of my coworkers from the age of 19 on seemed to suffer from some sort of neuromuscular damage, back pain, rotator cuff injuries, knee and ankle problems. Stephanie copes with the alarming number of ibuprofen she consumes per day. At one point, she looks wistfully at the opioids stored in a customer's bathroom. But prescription drugs are not an option for her, nor are massages or physical therapy or visits to a pain management specialist. On top of or intertwined with the physical exhaustion of her lifestyle is the emotional challenge Stephanie faces. She is the very model of the resilience psychologists recommend for the poor. When confronted with an obstacle, she figures out how to move forward. But the onslaught of obstacles sometimes reaches levels of overload. All that keeps her together is her bottomless love for her daughter, which is the clear, bright light that illuminates the entire book. It's hardly a spoiler to say that this book has a happy ending. Throughout the years of struggle and toil reported here, Stephanie nourished a desire to become a writer. I met Stephanie years ago, when she was in the early stages of her writing career. In addition to being an author, I am the founder of the Economic Hardship Reporting Project, an organization that promotes high-quality journalism on economic inequality, especially by people who are themselves struggling to get by. Stephanie sent us a query, and we snatched her up, working with her to develop pitches, polish drafts, and place them in the best outlets we could find, including the New York Times and the New York Review of Books. She is exactly the kind of person we exist for, an unknown working-class writer who needed just a nudge to launch her career. If this book inspires you, which it may, remember how close it came to never being written. Stephanie might have given in to despair or exhaustion. She might have suffered a disabling injury at work. Think, too, of all the women who, for reasons like that, never manage to get their stories told. Stephanie reminds us that they are out there in the millions, each heroic in her own way, waiting for us to listen. Barbara Ehrenreich.
Part 1. 1. The cabin. My daughter learned to walk in a homeless shelter. It was an afternoon in June, the day before her first birthday. I perched on the shelter's threadbare love seat, holding up an old digital camera to capture her first steps. Mia's tangled hair and thinly striped onesie contrasted with the determination in her brown eyes as she flexed and curled her toes for balance. From behind the camera, I took in the folds of her ankles, the rolls of her thighs, and the roundness of her belly. She babbled as she made her way toward me, barefoot across the tiled floor. Years of dirt were etched into that floor. As hard as I scrubbed, I could never get it clean. It was the final week of our 90-day stay in the cabin unit on the north side of town, allotted by the housing authority for those without a home. Next, we'd move into transitional housing, an old, run-down apartment complex with cement floors that doubled as a halfway house. However temporary, I had done my best to make the cabin a home for my daughter. I'd placed a yellow sheet over the love seat, not only to warm the looming white walls and gray floors, but to offer something bright and cheerful during a dark time. By the front door, I'd hung a small calendar on the wall. It was filled with appointments with caseworkers at organizations where I could get us help. I had looked under every stone, peered through the window of every government assistance building, and joined the long lines of people who carried haphazard folders of paperwork to prove that they didn't have money. I was overwhelmed by how much work it took to prove I was poor. We weren't allowed to have visitors, or to have very much at all. We had one bag of belongings. Mia had a single basket of toys. I had a small stack of books that I'd placed on the little shelves separating the living area.